and all of our partners that are here. On behalf of the South African National Editors Forum, led by our chairpersons, Bungalwa, the management committee, council members, and all of the editors, the title editors, good morning, and thank you very, very much for spending the morning with us for the Sanef annual fundraiser event. My name is Mahlatse Mahlase. I'm the Secretary General of Sanef, and for my sins, I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Eyewitness News. Like with all parts of our lives, we've all been affected by the coronavirus. For the past 3 years, Sanef has held this fundraising dinner somewhere else. It's been an evening of glitz and glamour where all of us got together, but unfortunately this year we had to change gear. We only had the opportunity to mark the Black Wednesday via Zoom meetings, which I think, looking back now, we were all wishing that we could be seated all around to mark that very important day in terms of our media freedom calendar. So we are truly, truly grateful that we are able to gather like this. We are very much aware of the rising numbers. We heard from our father during last night's family meeting that the numbers are rising. So let's continue to practice those safe protocols so that we can all stay safe and keep each other safe. But at Sanef, we are even more grateful that given the hard economic times, you as our partners, Arena, Brunswick, Media 24, Netwerk, 24, Old Mutual, Yellowwood, MTN, Sanlam, ENCA, ABSA, and MultiChoice continue to support our organization. We know that this is your contribution to strengthening our democracy. Like us, you believe in credible journalism being the lifeblood of our democracy. You agree with us that while our Constitution guarantees our hard-won freedom of expression, but even in a democratic country, freedom always needs defenders. I was reminded of these powerful words by the late Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court, Pius Langa, when he was commemorating Black Wednesday in 2009, and he said, and I quote, "Without the media, equality and human dignity would diminish in this democratic state. Independence of both the media and judiciary is very important for our democracy to flourish." Close quote. It is the media's job to not only hold those in authority accountable, but we always have to also pass the mic. We have to always ensure that we give the voiceless a voice. Despite our current challenges of an industry that is under-resourced, facing retrenchments, and a funding model that is under pressure, your support for our advocacy work gives us strength to continue to fight the good fight of ensuring that our journalists continue to work in an environment that allows them to report their work without fear or favor. With that, I would like to say, welcome to the South African National Editors Forum's fundraising breakfast. I will be the MC for the day, for the morning, sorry, not for the whole day, don't worry. We will let you go soon. Our program is not a very long one. We know that our speaker does have a commitment, and we are grateful that he continued to make the time to say he will come through and be with us. So without wasting any time, it is now my pleasure to introduce the man who will deliver our keynote address this morning. He without a doubt, has one of the toughest jobs in our country. He's leading a state-owned entity described as South Africa's biggest economic risk by Goldman Sachs group of analysts. He has to figure out what to do with a rising government guaranteed debt of 488 billion. Many of us are currently very happy with him because we haven't experienced the blackouts, or Sikonati, should I be politically correct and call them load shedding? in a while. But for many others, he's probably not their most favorite person because every morning they are victims of so-called load reduction. He is also arguably one of the most brave South Africans. I mean, he stepped into a hot seat to lead a state-owned entity in crisis mode, but with zero job security. I mean, he is, after all, the 13th CEO in a decade. Who does that? Its problems are many, not only to keep South Africa's lights on, but he has to rebuild an entity that was plagued by corruption and inefficiency and has been at the heart of that project state capture. So far, he has stayed on his course, he has showed tenacity, and he believes his plan will save our ailing power utility. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage Eskom CEO, Ruyter. He will be talking to us about restructuring Eskom beyond the energy crisis.
There we go.
With your permission, can I ask something? For audio purpose, because we're recording for television, can you do without the mic? Because the speaker system reflects with the microphone.
Would you have a loud enough voice?
No, without the microphone. Because now there is echo.
Yeah, it will actually suit me, because otherwise I have to hold this up. Can everybody at the back hear me? Over there? Okay, so let's do it that way. Okay. All right. Good. Right, thank you very much for that introduction. Really appreciate it. I'm not so sure about the bravery. Maybe it's a question of fools rushing in where angels fear to tread. But here we are. It is a tough job, but I think I'm on the verge of setting some record for longevity, about to complete my first year in office. So I guess we've got to be grateful for small mercies. Esteemed members of the media and of the South African National Editors Forum, I'm really honored by the invitation to address you today because we at Eskom regard the media as our partners. And I think that over the past year, we've really tried to step up our transparency, our communication, our availability, our accessibility. And I'd like to give credit at this point in time to our national spokesperson, Sikunati Manchansha, whom you know very well. Sikunati. You know, when he joined Eskom, people said that he was crossing to the dark side. I think, on the contrary, he's seen the light, and he has, and he's brought light to many of your lives, even as he has had to explain load shedding. So I think, Sikunati, thanks very much. Why do we regard the media as partners? And it's because of your reach. It's because of your ability to engage all of South African citizens, wherever they may be, in all 11 of our official languages, on an almost instantaneous basis. And that reach and that capability is something that no corporate can match. And therefore, partnering with you, making ourselves available, not for you to act as our mouthpiece. We understand that there's an editing and a filtering job that needs to go on, where you need to verify that what we say is true and is credible, and we get that. But for you to partner with us in conveying some very important messages to South African society is very important. And let me give you a case in point. You're aware that we have power alerts that go out on TV screens whenever the power system is constrained. And we can really see on our system how effective that power alert is. We get a response of between 100 and 300 megawatts when that power alert is flighted. So South African citizens actually get off their couches and they go and they switch off their power-hungry appliances. So that's a good example of the reach and the power that you've got. But of course it goes way beyond that. It goes to the job that you've done with many of your colleagues in exposing what has been going on in South Africa at large in terms of state capture and corruption, but also in terms of what has happened specifically at Eskom. And that job, I believe, is an example of the importance of having a strong and independent media. And we would urge you to continue to hold all of us to account, including myself. And I've had some rather bruising engagements with some of you at very early hours in the morning. But that's fine. That is your job, and that is what we have all signed up for, to be held accountable. We understand that we deal with public money. We have to be able to withstand public scrutiny, and therefore we welcome the degree of accountability that you require from us. And with your assistance in exposing the malfeasance that has unfortunately characterized Eskom for so long, that is not me frothing at the mouth, by the way. We have been able to recover 1.1 billion rand from McKinsey. We have recovered in excess of 770 million rand from Deloitte Consulting. We have, we're in the process of recovering more than 700 million rand from Trillion, and also from PwC Consulting. And the story, of course, doesn't end there. We've also gone after the individuals who have sought to enrich themselves at the expense of South Africa and of the taxpayer and of the electricity consumer by launching, in conjunction with the SIU, a 3.8 billion rand claim against the Guptas, Salim Essa, Mosebenzi Zwane, and former Eskom executives, including former chief executives. And again, the principle that we are following here is not so much that we think we are going to recover all the money. Much of the money, I'm sure, has been purloined and stashed safely away in strange jurisdictions around the world. But we understand that without holding people to account, you open the doors to a free-for-all. And if you do not demonstrate that there are consequences, and unfortunately in South Africa, the wheels of the criminal justice system grind very slowly indeed. And therefore, civil claims are a very important way of establishing this accountability. So we have parted ways as a consequence of the scrutiny with no fewer than 30 senior executives and managers, but we've also said goodbye to hundreds of others. And we have, in conjunction with the SIU, with the Hawks, we are continuing to investigate and to register cases to hold those to account. And the sad part is that as a consequence of state capture, such an important institution as Eskom has been hollowed out to a very large extent. And it's not only reflected in the poor maintenance of our power stations, which we are recovering, it's not only reflected in how we have handled billing of municipalities. We've only of late very aggressively started to act against delinquent municipalities who are defaulting in their obligations to us. But it's also in systems and processes, indeed in our very culture as an organization. So rebuilding the ethos that made Eskom the top global utility in the world as recently as 2001. That is the mountain that we've got to climb. And again, the more that we engage with yourselves and the more that we can demonstrate not only the bad news, but also some of the minor achievements that we're able to report, that will go a long way to rebuilding this great institution. So, as part of accountability, we would encourage you to hold the municipal elected officials accountable. Unfortunately, in our endeavors to recover some of the 34 billion rand that is overdue debt owed to Eskom, we have to engage in activities such as strictly applying the nominated maximum demand, which means that for a town like Bethel, sometimes they are without electricity for 9 hours a day. We also have to attach bank accounts, which results in a lack of service delivery. We have to attach movable assets like vehicles through court orders. And we take no pleasure in that. But without that assertive and strong approach, it's very difficult to get the attention of the elected officials who, after all, are responsible for ensuring that the bills are paid. So we would encourage you to keep on holding those individuals accountable as well. Similarly, I think the political leadership should be able to account. And we have certainly no issue with that. A question that I'm very often asked by members of the media is, what is the extent of political interference that I experience? And the answer to that is that I have had a really positive surprise in terms of the lack of political interference, particularly from Minister Pravin Gordhan. Maybe SAA has helped a bit. So let's keep him occupied with that one. But I think that I have really been given a free hand to do what I think is best from a business perspective, of course, in conjunction with the Eskom board. And I think that's very reassuring to get that message out to South Africans as well. There is no pressure on me to award a contract to a particular vendor. There is no pressure on me to appoint particular people to particular positions. And that, I think, is crucial in restoring trust. We also have very strong support from the Deputy President, who leads the Eskom political task team. And I can assure you that he is quite a tough taskmaster, not only with regard to Eskom, but also the other officials who have to solve this conundrum that is Eskom. With our gross debt now approaching some R500 billion, we pose a systemic risk to the South African economy. We understand that. 327 billion rand of that debt is guaranteed by National Treasury. If Eskom defaults, South Africa defaults. That's the harsh reality that we are faced with. So we need to find a way of making Eskom financially sustainable. And that is a challenge that we're engaged with at this point in time. We're very grateful for the fiscal support that we receive from National Treasury. Up until 2026, we anticipate that we'll be receiving about 121 billion rand. The sad part of this 121 billion rand in fiscal support that we'll be receiving is that it's money that is diverted from other key national priorities. Feeding schemes. It takes money from roads, hospitals, houses, local service delivery. So we need to wean ourselves off taxpayer support as soon as possible. There are not too many ways in which we can achieve this. The best and the only way really is for Eskom to charge cost-reflective tariffs. No business can survive by selling its product at below its cost of production. And when I talk about cost of production, I talk about efficient costs. We're not asking for subsidies for our own excess cost, for our own legacy cost of state capture. We're asking to be paid a fair tariff that reflects the cost of production, benchmarked against international best practice. Again, hold us to account on that. The balance of the cost that is the challenge that we as a management team have to face. We as a management team have to reduce our costs. We've already reduced our headcount by some 2,000 in the past 9 months, so that has been a positive development. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, right? So we are making good progress in that regard. I think as well, from an operational stability perspective, we are today entering our 40th day of not burning any diesel in order to support our system. And this is at the same time as we have taken out for long-term maintenance, the so-called reliability maintenance program, 11 units, which is equivalent to 2 major power stations that we've taken off the grid and that we are now maintaining. So for us to be able to keep the country's lights on without diesel while doing maintenance, I think is good. And let me talk a bit about diesel. Diesel costs us about 10 million rand per hour, which is a staggering number, 10 million rand per hour. So again, it speaks to the need for us to fix the operational integrity of Eskom. Part of what we need to do, obviously, is to get our new build, Medupi and Kusile in particular, functioning well. We're making good progress on that. We now know what the design defects are that have bedeviled those 2 plants, and we have implemented the necessary modifications on 4 of the units at Medupi. And we are now at a point where those units can operate to their full original design capacity. And we will continue completing those modifications at Medupi with a view to having that power station complete by the end of the first quarter, calendar quarter of next year, reaching commercial operation on all 6 units, and then continuing with the work that we are doing at Kusile and rolling out similar modifications there. So we are doing maintenance, we are correcting the new build, but that is not enough. Over the next decade, Eskom will be retiring between 10 and 12,000 megawatts of old coal-fired capacity. And we need to replace this with new generation capacity. And this is the opportunity that we've got as a country to pivot from the legacy that we've had of a high emission generation system to a system that is decarbonized to a much greater extent, that lowers its emission profile. And I know we're in trouble at Kendal for our emissions, which was brought to our attention incidentally by a member of the media. So again, it shows you the importance of what you're doing. And if we're able to pivot to building a generation system that enables us, first of all, to repurpose some of our old power stations to renewable energy, to gas-fired turbines, and work in that regard is making very good progress. And also to work with the IPP office and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to procure the 11.8 gigawatts that was recently announced by Minister Montash. We can make good progress. But it is our view that we need more. We need more storage and we need more generation capacity. And if we play our cards right as a country, and we have a cleverly designed industrial policy that seeks to maximize local content, not to compete in, for example, PV wafer manufacture with China. We will not be able to compete with them, and I think we must recognize that. But in terms of the gantries, the frames, the glass, there are so many opportunities for us to maximize local content, and in so doing, create a viable alternative to coal mining jobs. And this is what we mean when we talk about the just energy transition. The energy transition, we believe, is inevitable. It is coming at us from a climate change perspective, but it's also coming at us from a cost perspective. Solar PV is now being produced in Abu Dhabi at 1.35 US cents per kilowatt hour. Now multiply that by 15, add a bit to storage, and you get a number that is significantly lower than Eskom's cash cost today using fully amortized coal and nuclear plants. So it's a no-brainer that the lowest cost electricity available today is in the renewable space. So if we're able to leverage this opportunity, we can create a new future for those communities and those workers who have invested their careers and their lives in the coal value chain. Merely moving away from coal without addressing those very legitimate concerns, we believe is the wrong thing to do. We have to understand that there are coal miners out there who have families, who have responsibilities. There are towns like Kumati and Hendrina built around coal. If we pull the plug, literally and figuratively, on those towns, what will await them is economic and social catastrophe. So we are working with institutions like the World Bank and other financing institutions in order to make that transition a just one. And I think this is very exciting. I think it's a real opportunity to use, ironically, the lack of generation capacity in South Africa as a tool to drive a stimulus program to create much needed jobs. We can export our minerals to China, where they are beneficiated, and then we re-import the manufactured goods. But electricity is great. You cannot export your coal and re-import electricity. So electricity needs to be generated locally, and that is why with our demand and our growing requirement for more electricity, we have the opportunity to use our South African electricity market to act as that stimulus that can drive the just energy transition. So we believe that there's a bright future ahead for us. It's going to take a lot of hard work. But we as a management team at Eskom, we are committed, we are energized, not electrified, and we are truly positive about the future. But in order for us to do this, we really, again, need your support and your enablement in order to carry this message to South Africa and to make sure that citizens understand the necessity of paying their bills and being safe with electricity. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address you today. I really appreciate it. And again, keep us honest, keep us accountable, and let's work together to get the message out there. Thank you.
We will definitely keep you accountable. I think, and we thank you for acknowledging the important role that the media has played in exposing the corruption at Eskom. I always say sometimes when you watch state capture and what people are saying, you want to say, remember that article that was written by so-and-so 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and sometimes as long as 8 years ago. So we're always grateful when people in leadership positions like yours understand the important role of the media. We know that you are a man on a rush, and we would like to let you go. But Paula is going to help me so that we can thank you for giving us the time this morning. And we wish you luck with that important call that you're having in this hour. And we hope that you do break the record beyond the year in terms of tenure at Eskom. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. And I will declare this.
Yeah. Did you guys want to ask questions? I don't know if you've still got time.
Yeah.
Okay, we can take a few questions. Do you want to?
Well, I didn't actually have a specific question.
Okay.
I thought editors and journalists may, particularly about the energy transition. It's so fascinating, the renewable energy plan. And I was just wondering why it's taking so long to put that in place. It seems to be taking long. I may be wrong, so.
He needs to speak here.
Okay, I'm going to move.
Right.
Maybe
Now we
something's
need to-
happening. It's
Social distance and all that.
that something
Yes.
actually is happening there with the integrated power plant, and some of us may not be aware of it. So
I think the slow rollout of the IPP program is partly due to Eskom. In 2015, Eskom essentially stopped procuring IPP electricity, saying that it had enough of its own. That turned out to be a bad call, and that delayed subsequent phases of the rollout immensely. But we are now, I think, very much aligned with the new head of the IPP office, Bernard Magoro. In fact, he used to be the system operator for Eskom, so he understands exactly what is required. And we're on the same page that we now need to accelerate and expedite. We obviously want to be involved in the procurement process as much as possible. Previously, what's happened is that the IPP office would do the procurement and then issue us with a contract and say, okay, now sign and agree. And we believe that the more we're involved in the inception, the better the outcome will be from an implementation perspective. So we are really committed to making this work, and I don't think that there are any roadblocks in rolling this out any further. And we've actually challenged the DMRE, and we've said 11.8 is good, but we need more. Bring on the next wave. It takes about 18 to 24 months from inception to bring utility scale photovoltaic online. To bring wind online takes about 36 months. Similar for gas. A new coal plant, if you were able to get financing and insurance for it, you will know that banks increasingly are declining to finance new coal projects. That'll take you more than a decade. And these are mega projects with all the difficulties associated with mega projects. And new nuclear will probably take 12 to 15 years, purely because of the size and complexity of executing the projects. Now, bearing in mind what I said earlier about 10 to 12,000 megawatts that we're going to be taking out of commission over the next decade, it is clear that just from a timeline perspective, your technology selection makes itself. We don't have time to wait a decade for a new coal-fired power plant to come online. We need to get going as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Is there anybody else with a question?
Eskom has been blamed, or let me just say, lack of sufficient and stability electricity generation has been blamed for stagnating the economy. Are there any plans to make sure that as we are looking into the future, there will be sufficient electricity generation to make sure that people are investing in manufacturing or any other plans to create such jobs that are required?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. If you do not have reliable electricity, you will not attract investment. If you're a manufacturer and you have to invest not only in your plant but also in a generator for when load shedding comes, your cost competitiveness as an investment destination is seriously undermined. So we need to get the reliability and availability of our generation system to global standards. No question about that. Bear in mind, though, that the cost of tariffs that are cost reflective for reliable electricity is far lower than the cost of unreliable electricity, where you have to generate your own using diesel. I happen to know the numbers because I ran a couple of factories. So if you run your own diesel generator, it costs you typically about R4.50 to R5 per kilowatt hour, compared to Eskom's charge of about R1.21. So that's the cost of unreliable electricity. And that is why we've got to restructure our tariffs, make sure that they are sufficient to attract new investment. If Eskom cannot cover its costs, why would a private investor with a higher expectation of return be able to recover its costs? So why would they come and invest? So unfortunately, the sad message, which is not very popular, but it's a reality, is that South African electricity prices will have to increase to become cost reflective in order for us to address the lack of reliability. Perfect timing. Right, other questions?
My question is around just getting citizens to pay. I mean, what are you guys doing just to try and get that? I mean, and also the load rotation process. How long do you expect that to be in place?
So load reduction is something that we do in order to protect local distribution grids. So what happens when there is excess illegal connections and electricity theft, the transformers, these green transformers that you see mounted on poles, they get overloaded and then they explode, which obviously, first of all, is a safety hazard, but secondly, it costs a lot of money to replace them. So where we know that there is likely to be overloading of a local distribution grid, we then reduce the load to that particular area, and we know where the illegal electricity connections are and where the theft is taking place. We also know that this is not a township versus suburbs issue, and that's why you will have seen in the media that we have been going in to disconnect illegal connections in Waterfall and in Dainfern, which is where I live. So, but my bill is up to date, I promise. And so wherever you are as a citizen, you've got to pay your dues. That's the quid pro quo. You've got, and I think it's a 702 campaign about human rights, but you've also got human obligations. And one of your obligations as a citizen is to pay for the services that you use. And we will continue to enforce that. It's not calculated to make us popular. Some of our colleagues who go in to disconnect illegal connections get threatened, they get taken hostage, some of them get assaulted. We've even had security guards killed in the execution of their duty. But what is the alternative? The alternative is that we have a system like we've seen in Africa's largest economy, Nigeria, that in the past week completely collapsed because it was no longer fit for purpose. So that's the alternative, and clearly we have to opt for order rather than chaos. Thank you.
I will excuse you because we know that you do have an important call. Thank you very, very much for indulging us, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know how these things go. You plan months in advance, and then the president calls, and then we all have to oblige. And that's why he's had to leave us quite early this morning. But we are really grateful that he's been able to make the time. We will continue engaging with you. And right now, I'd like to call upon the chairperson of the South African National Editors Forum, who's also the political editor for Newsroom Africa.